morning, Lake Silverhead. Will you stand on your feet? We're excited to worship, to sing with you this morning. We serve a good God.
Take you at your word. If you said it, I'll believe it. I've seen how good it was. If you started, you'll complete it. I'll take you at your word. You spoke, and the chaos fell in line. Well, I know, 'cause I've seen it in my life. Yeah, it's a narrow road that leads to life, but I wanna be on it. Yeah. And it's a narrow road, and the tide is high, but you're parting the waters. I'll take you at your word.
that we couldn't escape.
But he came and he died and he rose. Those walls are rubble now.
Remember those giants we call death and grave? They were like mountains that stood in our way.
But he came and he died and he rose. Those giants are dead now.
All over this room, this is our God. Will you help us say, come on.
This is our God. This is who He is. He loves us.
This is our God.
This is our God. This is what He does.
What He does.
He saves us. He bore the cross. He's the grave.
Be the
Let
day.
heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Remember that fear that took our breath away. Fear so weak that we
Could barely pray. But he heard every word, every whisper.
Now those altars in the wilderness tell the story of His faithfulness. Never once did He fail, and He never will. This is our God. This is who He is. He loves us. This is our God. This is what He does. He saves us. For the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did. He did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but Him. This is our God. This is who He is. He loves us. This is our God. This is what He does. He saves us. For the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. For the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus.
Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. He's the King of Kings. Amen. In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. say, praise, praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one, God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King to reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one, God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. In the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good. For the Lamb had conquered death, and the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored, and the church of Christ was born. Then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not kneel, shall not fade. By His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. We say, oh, praise the Father. Come on and praise the Son. Praise the Spirit. Praise the Spirit. Our God is God of glory. God of glory. Majesty. Oh, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings.
Good morning. Yes, you can clap. It's okay. Do it. Clap in church. Yes. God is worthy to be praised. You can take your seat. Good morning. My name is Jennifer. I'm one of the staff members here. Thanks, Fred. Yes. You know what? There's no place I'd rather be than with you guys on a Sunday morning. I'm so grateful we get to gather and worship together. So thanks for being here. Thanks for giving up whatever you gave up to be here this morning. I'm super grateful for you. If today is your very first day with us, or maybe you've been around for a little while and you haven't done this yet, I would love to invite you to fill out a Connect card. We just really believe strongly around here that church is not a spectator sport. Church is a place where you plug in, you get involved, you do the things that God calls us to do. And so the very first step for you to do that here that we've put in place is called a Connect card. And on the QR code that's on the seat back, there's a QR code on the seat back in front of you. If you just scan that, you'll find that Connect card. You fill it out. It gives us the chance to welcome you and to send you some information about how you can take some next steps here at Lake Sawyer. And one of those next steps being something that we really value very highly here, and that is to serve. I said church is not a spectator sport. This is a place where we all plug in, we all lock arms, and we do church together. And so we have something that we call behind the scenes, and it's we put that in place for you to come and learn about all the different ministries that are going on around here. And so we do it every the first weekend of every month. So guess what? Next weekend is October, you guys. It's October, pumpkin is here, it's pumpkin spice, everything, everywhere you go. So what we want you to do is, if you're not serving, we want you to come to behind the scenes, and we'll take you on a tour. It's during each service, we actually will walk you through each of the areas of serving so that you can kind of get a feel for where you might be able to use your gifts the best around here. So I invite you to do that. The other place where we really want you is in a smaller community. It's one thing to come on a Sunday morning and be in these rows and participate in a Sunday service where we're worshiping God together, but the place that we grow the most is in a smaller community, around a circle with people who are wrestling through the things of faith together. And so we put a lot of things in place for you to plug into this. We realize that being part of a group is a sacrifice, because you're sacrificing time, you're sacrificing probably some authenticity. It's hard to be vulnerable and authentic in a smaller group of people, but that's the place where God grows you. And so that's where we want you, because we want God growing you. So you can scan that, again, same QR code. It's all in the same place, you guys. You just go to the QR code and you can see where groups are. We've got Starting Point, Rooted, Grief Share, and community groups are all beginning this week. So if you're not in a group, please get in a group. That's where we want you. So tonight, right here at 5 o'clock, we are doing our group launch. And this is for our community groups specifically. So these are the longer term ones. It's a lengthier commitment. But tonight at 5 o'clock, if you're not part of one of these and you're interested in it, please come. It's from 5 to 6:30. We're going to put circles of people together here. We're going to have some food. We're going to have a great time. We're going to get started in these communities. And if you don't have one, please come, and we'll get you in one. And we only can do all of this stuff that I just talked about because of your generosity. This church is incredibly generous, and you are sowing seeds into God's kingdom when you give here, when you give financially, when you give of your time, when you give of your talents. You're sowing into God's church in his kingdom right here in Black Diamond. So thank you for your generosity. We cannot do any of this stuff if it weren't for you, because it is about us as the church. So we are starting a new series this morning called Unoffendable. I'm super excited about it. Something I've been working on for a while. And so welcome to Lake Sawyer. We love you guys. Let's get going.
Well, good morning, everybody. How you guys doing? It is good to be here with you. I'm excited for this series, and I think what we're going to be talking about over the next 2 weeks is a really important topic, especially in the world that we find ourselves in. And we're going to talk about how do we be people who can walk through life without being in a constant state of offendedness. And I'm sure you've probably realized it seems like everywhere you go in life these days, you're either offending someone or you're being offended yourself. Like, even if I reflect back on my last week and some change, I've got countless experience of this. Last Sunday, I was driving into to church, and I was heading towards the Four Corners area of Maple Valley. I needed to stop at Safeway before I came in, and I was right at the part where there's the crosswalk for the Cedar River Trail. You kind of know where that's at. You know, usually the lights flash as an indicator that someone's about to cross the crosswalk there. And I was driving the speed limit, and I was probably about like 25 feet away from the crosswalk when I saw the lights begin to flash. And I'm sure you've had these moments before where your brain is processing a lot of information all at once. And so I see the lights flashing, and I quickly scan the crosswalk. There's no one in the crosswalk. I'm thinking, okay, if I stop right now, I'm essentially slamming on my brakes, and I'm going to kind of make a lot of noise. And so it looks like it's a safe situation. And so I make the choice to proceed forward through the flashing lights at that moment. And again, what I should have done, this is my confession, what I should have done was I should have stopped. That's what we're supposed to do. I didn't do that. It felt like the safest call was to go forward. I didn't see anybody, and I just still didn't see anybody until I got like right up to the crosswalk. When I got to that part where I'm crossing through it, I heard a loud scream. There was no one in the crosswalk. It drew my attention to the gentleman standing on the curb, seeing me, and he quickly gave me the single finger salute. And I remember in my car thinking, and I almost said this out loud, like, wow, that escalated quickly. Like, it was just like he was angry, and he was like so upset. And as all this is happening, I'm like, this person better not go to Lake Sawyer Church. And then I said hi to him first service. No, I'm just kidding. That didn't happen. I remember as I kind of drove on, I was like, do you remember the good old days when you could make a mistake, where there was grace, where we weren't held to such a standard of perfection? Like where if you messed up, people thought, you know what, mistakes happen. I don't need to get so offended. I don't need to respond in such an aggressive way. I'm sure that driver was probably not trying to kill me on this Sunday morning. Hey, he maybe just made a judgment that I disagree with, but I can just let it go. It feels like that doesn't happen anymore. Matter of fact, a study was done by the Pew Research Group a few years ago, and what they found is most Americans believe that other Americans get offended way too easily. The number is 62%. 62% of people believe other Americans get so offended over what seems to be the smallest of things. And even as I say that, you probably hear it and think, yeah, that's right. Everyone else is getting offended. Like I say something and they get offended. The problem is that everyone else is just way too sensitive. But what I want you to understand is you are someone else's someone else. Like they're looking at you thinking, why did this person, I didn't mean it that way. Why are they so offended? Why are they so angry and frustrated at what I say? And again, I see this in my life all the time. So again, last week, coming up to a crosswalk, guy sees me, he's livid, gives me the middle finger. I'm thinking, how dare him? Later that same week, I am going to meet a friend for lunch in South Center. I'm on the 405 freeway. My accent came out there. I was on 405. The 405, it just sounds better. I was on 405, and I was heading to the mall, and there was someone who was merging onto the freeway. And as they were merging onto the freeway, it's like they didn't see that my car was right there in the spot that they were attempting to merge into. And so what I quickly did is I slammed on the brakes, creating space for that person to enter into my lane. But almost as quickly as I slammed on the brakes, I gave them the single finger salute. No, I didn't do that. No, I promise. I really promise. But you know what I did? I threw my hands up in the air. Like, what are you doing? Right? Apparently someone else is driving my car at this point. Like, what are you doing? Like, you could have killed me. Like, do you not know how to drive? Do you not know what's like? Did you not see me here in this lane? And this is happening. It's like almost as quickly as I'm reacting, I'm being convicted at the way I judge someone else's reaction. You see, it's true for all of us. We can be so quick to get offended. And it's like everywhere that we look, everywhere we go, we find reason to be offended. We live life in a state of offense. But here's the truth. Not every offense is on the same level. Like we process information, we process situations, we process realities and how they hit us and how we respond and whether or not we're even offended depends on kind of where that information is coming from. So it got me thinking, like, what are sort of the levels that we experience offense? And the first one is kind of what I've been talking about. It's surface level offenses, right? It's like what happens as we're out and about. It's what happens when we're at the grocery store or at work. It's like these sort of things, they just happen. They're almost like flesh wounds. Like, oh, that hurt, but you know what? I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna heal from that. Probably sure that guy did not think about what he did to me beyond that morning. We just don't, it's just like it's not a big deal. It's surface level. We move on. This will happen for all of us every single day. And here's what I would tell you, just as like an indicator as we talk about these things. If you find yourself living in a perpetual state of offense around surface wound offending, it should tell you a lot about the condition and the state of your heart. Because this is just the top level. See, if you go one level deeper, you're not talking about surface level offenses, you're talking about personal offenses. And these are the sort of things that where people challenge who you are. They challenge or they say something about you and it hurts. And so some of these things are like, you know what? You're always late. You're not a reliable person. You're not an honest person. You're not a good person. You're not a fun person to be around. When someone says those things about us, we get offended. And here's the thing. We get offended even more so when we have insecurities about these things. And so if someone says something crazy about you that you don't even think to be true about yourself, it hurts, but it doesn't necessarily stick with you. But if someone makes an attack on you or comments about you in a way that you already have a level of insecurity about, it just wrecks you. And the truth is, it's also the person, right? If it's a person you care about, if it's a person that you love, you're going to extend some grace to them. You're going to, you know what, they didn't mean it, or there's a track record of just positive affirmations, and so I can let this go. But when it's a person that you don't care about, who makes a comment about you, that attacks who you are, that is supported by insecurities that you already have about yourself, we get offended. And it's really, really hard to let this level of offense go. Because again, it cuts, it's deep. But here's the thing, it's not the deepest level that we experience offense. The deepest level where we experience offense is on the worldview level. This idea of people are offending what you or I believe to be true. When sort of our way of life gets attacked, or what we believe gets challenged. As Christians, we have this tendency, when it feels like other people are attacking or dismissing what we believe, we get offended. When it feels like how we live our lives is no longer possible because of external circumstances, we get offended. Now, as Americans, not even just Christians, as Americans, we feel sort of the same way when our worldview gets attacked. Every single one of us has a vision of what America is about. Each and every one of us has a vision of what this country should be. And we all have some varying levels of different opinions and different visions. And when that gets attacked, when you're like, I can't believe you believe this to be true about America. This is what I believe to be true of America. What you want to do is counter to the very core of what I believe about this country. I am offended. And we see this play out in our world today in the political spectrum. Like we all know, we are just months away, if even that, from a presidential election. And it seems like gone are the days where people understood that we are all Americans with different views on policy about how the country should be run. We held this common belief that we are Americans. No matter what your political party or affiliation is, at the core, you are an American. That's not what happens today. What happens today is that I believe that this is what America needs. I believe that this is the right trajectory and picture for our country. And if you don't believe what I believe, then you are not an American. What you believe is trying to destroy this country, and I am offended that you would have this view and you think that this is actually what the country needs. No, I'm offended that you can think that way. And then here's the thing. In churches, what we do is we take the offense we experience on a worldview level for our faith, and we take the offense that we experience in the political spectrum based off our worldview for this country, and we conflate those two. We put them right together, and now we are like exponentially on edge. It feels like someone is trying to take away or destroy our very life, and so we go through life almost like with this trauma of offense. We're just looking. Like every little thing sets us off. Every little thing is a reason to get mad, even if it's a flesh wound, even if it's a surface level offense. We treat it all as if it's an attack on our worldview. And I just don't know if as people we realize how much all of this weighs us down. I don't know if as people we realize how much it burdens our soul. I don't think we realize the weight that we experience as we just go through life, carrying offenses from others, as we go through life being offended in this area and then this area and this area. Again, this is our common experience. The other thing that I don't think we realize, because if we did realize this, it would change it. I don't think we realize that holding on to an offense never hurts the offender. Right? Like this guy standing on the corner. I promise you he's not thought about that interaction at all since it's happened. But I'm like, how could he? Why would he do that? Didn't he understand that my intentions? I wasn't trying to hurt him. No. Holding on to an offense never hurts the offender. It allows them to keep hurting you. And because of that, it's just this burden. We just carry it. And it feels normal. It feels so normal that we don't even question whether or not it's right. Maybe the question is that we'd be asking right now is, well, what are we supposed to do with this then? Like if this has just become a normal part of our reality, a normal part of our experience in life, what is it that we are to do? Jesus says these words in Matthew chapter 11, beginning in verse 28. Jesus then said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, my teaching upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." And we talked about this, how offense burdens our souls, and what Jesus longs for his followers is not to experience a burdened soul, but to experience a soul that is rested. And when we find ourselves constantly being offended by different things in life, we are never at a place of rest, because when we are offended, and if you can think about any moment that you have found yourself being offended, maybe you're sitting here right now thinking, Mike, what you're saying is offensive to me right now. What you will know is in those moments we are flooded with emotion. That's sort of the underlying thing. We're offended, but there are emotions that are supporting it. We feel hurt, and so we're offended. We feel embarrassed or exposed, and we are offended. We are angry or frustrated, and so we show this offense. We're bitter, and we're constantly offended. And what I think is important for us to understand is while emotions give us insight into what is going on internally, our emotions aren't always truthful. Most of us believe that whatever it is that we are feeling is true. Because we think, well, if it feels true to me in my heart, then it must be true. And so if I'm angry over this issue, well, my heart feels like that's where it's coming from. And so I have the right to feel this way because it's coming from my heart. And maybe on some level that makes sense. Maybe we kind of have connected the dots on that. But from a biblical standpoint, that is not true. Jeremiah says this in Jeremiah 17, verse 9. The human heart is the most what? Deceitful. Not the most trustworthy, not the most honest. The human heart is the most deceitful of all things and desperately wicked. Who knows? He says, who knows really how bad it is? The point here is, Jeremiah's like, you can't trust your heart. You can't just go, oh, if the emotion's there, if the feeling's there, it flows from my heart, therefore it could be good. No, we cannot and should not always trust our feelings or emotions. We need to recognize the way that those can be misled or misleading to our experience. And I can just tell you, in my own life, I have found that to be true. Like, in my own life, there's been times where, like, something's happened, and I've got this rush and this flood of feelings and emotion that I think supports what I see or what has happened from my perspective, only to later take a step back and realize, you know what? That's not actually what happened. That response that I had wasn't the right response, but my flood of emotions led me to a place of quick offense. Now, the point of this series isn't to say, hey guys, we all get offended. Deal with it. Have fun. Hope for the best. No, the point of the series is to recognize, okay, it is natural to experience offense. This happens. But what can we do to ensure that we don't live life in a constant state of offense? What can we do as people to ensure that we're relieving the burden that is placed on our soul when we just go from one offense to another? The purpose of this series is to paint a hopeful picture and perspective for every Christian on how to navigate a difficult life with the proper perspective that's placed on our Savior. And so that's what we're going to be talking about this week and next week. And as we begin to further sort of pull this apart, I want us to look at a story that we find in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 17, beginning in verse 1. And you can turn there or you can follow on the screen. But this is where it begins. Verse 1, one day, Jesus said to his disciples, there will always be temptations to sin. But what sorrow awaits the person who does the tempting? Maybe that's a verse that you've heard before, but I think it's worth kind of unpacking a little bit because this is one of those places where understanding the original language helps us have broader perspective of what Jesus is actually talking about. The word temptation that is used in verse 1 is the Greek word scandalon. And what that word really means is that word is to set a trap. Other translations of the Bible will actually just use the word offense instead of temptation. The idea is that there will be people in your life. It will feel like there's people in life who are constantly setting a trap to trip you up, to get you angry, setting a trap to help get you into a state of offense. And it feels that way for us, like there's just always someone setting one trap after another that we get tripped up on. Jesus is acknowledging this reality, but at the same time, as this sort of story continues, as this teaching continues, Jesus also says, look, the offended person has a choice. We don't always have a choice whether or not someone's going to do something that brings about a response, but we do have a choice, big picture, whether or not we will allow that offense to sit and burden our soul. Jesus says this in verses 3 and 4. He says, so watch yourself. If another believer sins, rebuke that person. Even if there is repentance, forgive. Even if that person wrongs you 7 times a day, and each time turns again and asks for forgiveness, you must forgive. Again, this is like a super hard teaching of Jesus. Most of us, being offended one time, struggle to forgive. Jesus' point is, even if that person offends you 7 times a day and asks for forgiveness, our response is to forgive. When we look at a verse like this, I think it's really important to remember who it's referencing, to remember what the expectation is of who is receiving Jesus' words. It's you. It's not like this broad teaching, like, oh, this is a good life illustration. No, Jesus is talking to you. He's talking to me. So we ask the question, who's to watch themselves? You are to watch yourself. If someone sins against you,
Who's to forgive them? Not the person sitting next to you. No, you. You must rebuke that person. You must forgive that person. Even if that person has wronged you multiple times, each day when they ask for forgiveness, you must forgive them. Like, if you don't like it, don't get mad at me. You can take it up with Jesus. That's what he says. And I know when I say that, you're like, oh, see, there it is, Mike. But that's the problem. When someone offends me, they don't ask for forgiveness. Most of the time, when someone offends me, they don't even know they offended me, and so I don't need to forgive them. I don't need to let go of this. I don't need to move on. Like, Jesus has given me an out because that person has never, ever come to me. The problem with that way of thinking is Jesus also said this. If you forgive those who sin against you, your heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you refuse to forgive others, your Father will not forgive your sins. Notice here in Matthew 6, Jesus doesn't say, if you forgive those who ask for forgiveness. Jesus doesn't say, if you forgive those that you feel like justified or are worthy or have earned your forgiveness. He doesn't say any of that. He says, look, if we don't forgive others, we have to realize that our Father could hold that same standard when it comes to us. This should be a sobering reality for most of us. The reason we let go, the reason why we don't hold on to offense, the reason why we extend forgiveness, the reason why we ask for forgiveness from others is because we recognize our brokenness. We recognize the same temptation that we have to offend others in a different situation or circumstance. And even as I say that, hear me, I know how hard this is. Like I can be a person who holds a grudge. I can be a person at times it's difficult to let go of things. And so even when it's like, okay, what Jesus is telling me, what Jesus is telling us, is that when it comes to the areas of life where we're being offended, we have to be willing to let go. Well, I don't want to let go, Jesus. I don't have the power to let go. He would look at us and say, I don't expect you to have the power. And because none of this whole following Jesus thing is not all in our power, it's God's power flowing through us. And the disciples understood this. Look at what they respond in verse 5. Still, same chapter, Luke 17, verse 5. The apostle said to the Lord, show us how to increase our faith. They knew, like, I don't have the power to do this, Jesus. You want me to forgive, and okay, that's one time, but you want me to forgive this person who's asking for forgiveness again and again. You want me to forgive people who don't ask for my forgiveness? I don't have the faith to do it. The disciples knew that to avoid a life of continual offense, that they would need God-sized faith. They wouldn't need elementary faith or expectant faith, as Taylor talked about last week. They would need exile faith. Faith that comes from the perspective that this world is not our home. That there's something greater that awaits the follower of Jesus and the life that is to come. And what this verse reminds me of, and what I've come to realize, even as I've just processed and thought about this in my own life, is this. Faith is taking what I'm holding and putting it in God's hands. That's what faith is. Whatever it is, it's like, God, okay, I'm dealing with this. I'm struggling with this. I'm offended because of this. God, I believe that you have the power to take this from me. So I'm going to, in faith, I'm going to place it in your hands. The opposite of that is to live a life of offense is to hold everything in your hands. Like, oh no, God, you don't get this one. God, I'm going to hold on to this one. I'm going to live with this one because what I really want is a little bit of revenge. What I really want is that someone's going to see that and go, you know what? You're right. I'm going to hold on to this because I can have control over it. And when I say that, again, I get the objections. I have some of the same ones. Like, Mike, they're challenging my worldview. You know what? These surface level ones, no problem. Here you go, God. Even personal ones, you know what? No problem. Here you go, God. But they're challenging my worldview. They're challenging my faith. Like, I can't just let that go. I can't just pretend like what was said didn't really get said. Like, I have no option but to be offended. And I guess that would be true. If you really believe what God needs from his people is for us to walk around this world being offended as if that's going to bring about the kingdom change that God desires. I mean, just think about that. Like, God's up in heaven and being like, ooh, well, you know we're going to change the world? I want all my followers to kind of just be offended like the rest of the world. And then everyone else will see people who look just like them. And then the world will change. No, that's ridiculous. Like, we're in the world, but not of the world. We're called to be light in dark places. And that cannot happen if we hold on to these offenses. It can't happen unless in faith we let go and trust in God. Here's the thing. Either God is God, and he's capable of taking the things that we hold on to, or you need to acknowledge that you really think you're God. And just call it for what it is. Just acknowledge that you refuse to release it. Don't make it about God, because it's clear if you can't let it go that it's really about you. As I wrap up this morning, I just have some quick thoughts on how we can consistently live more regularly unoffended lives. Right? Because I think all of us on some level, we're going to struggle to let go. We're going to struggle to trust God. We're going to struggle to surrender our right to be offended. And so what does the Bible have to say about that can help consistently put us in that place? And I think clearly the Apostle Paul has a lot to say about this in a letter that he wrote to the church in Rome. And this is going to be a verse known to many of you, but maybe taken in a little bit different direction. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 and 3. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world. Feels like I just kind of said that. But let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Do not think you are better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourself, measuring yourself by the faith God has given us. So 3 quick thoughts. The first is this. Recognize your thought patterns. This is what Paul's saying. Do not conform to the patterns of this world. Recognize the way that you've allowed your thoughts and your actions to conform. Understand that the directions of your thoughts lead to behaviors and actions. And so the question I have for you is, where does your mind consistently go? And for some of us, we are so busy all the time that we don't know, because our mind just goes to the next thing, goes to the next thing, goes to the next thing. And we just think whatever the response is, whatever we're thinking about, whatever the feeling is justified because it comes from our heart. And we don't pause to go, okay, wait, what is the direction of my thoughts? What is forming the patterns of my behavior? Where is this going? And then the second question of that is, what is being inputted that is forming these thoughts, behaviors, and patterns? And I talk about this a lot. The world talks about it a lot. And I don't know if we don't care as people. We think we're better than other people. But what we consume shapes who we are. And so when we spend hours and hours and hours on social media consuming information. It's all coming in, and we see pictures of friends living these amazing lives that we know aren't really true, but we can't process that in that moment. It's all forming this belief about ourselves. It's forming these patterns. It helps shape what we think about other people. It's not just social media. What other inputs? Cable news, podcasts. Like, be smart. Recognize that what you take in forms and shapes the patterns of what you believe. And maybe just as a fun exercise, or like a heartbreaking exercise, look at your life, look at one day, and look at all that you consume. And you might not, I don't consume much. No, most of us consume hours of information. And then hold that up against your time with God. And I think it's going to be really obvious. You might not even need to do the exercise. I think it's probably pretty obvious at what is shaping and transforming our minds. What's developing the patterns that play out in our lives. If you want to be offended less, then you got to change your inputs. You got to recognize your thought patterns. Secondly, it's this. You need to recognize that to live an offended life, takes you outside of God's will. And I think the truth is, sometimes we think of like, no, this offense is righteous anger. And so when I'm like angry about the things that Jesus was angry about, it puts me right in the will of God. And here's what I would say. There's some truth to that. But Jesus' righteous anger moved into action. For most of us, that's not what happens. And to be clear, putting something out on social media is not action. We just get angry, and we're angry, and we're like, oh, this is justified because it's attacking my worldview. And so we're angry, and we just go on. We're like, we tell someone else, do you know how angry I am? And then they get angry. The only action that we're bringing about is creating anger and frustration in other people instead of saying, I am angry about this. And so I will leverage my life, my time, my resources to bring about this change. Because the truth is, when we live in a constant state of offense, we are thinking more about justice than we are about Jesus. We want to be heard. We want our perspective to be seen. It just sits at the forefront of our mind, and that's the only focus that we have. And if you want to be used by God to accomplish His will, He, not whatever it is that's offending you, Jesus needs to be at the forefront of your mind. You and I need to seek to please Him, not settle a score. And so I think if I look at my life, so often when I am in a place of continual offense, I recognize the reality that leads me out of the will of God. The last thing that Paul says is this. He says, think of yourself less. Translation here, don't think of yourself too highly. Don't think of yourself too often. Don't take yourself too seriously. And we all do this. We all have a tendency to take ourselves seriously, and these very words are counter to our culture today. Because in the world today, we're told, you know what? You need to think of yourself more. You need to focus on yourself more. You need to be an advocate for yourself. But the truth is, the way of Jesus is to die to one's self, to prioritize the needs of others above yourself. And I get it. From a worldly perspective, this doesn't make sense. But as I've already said, we are not citizens of this world. We are exiles in a foreign land. And as Paul wraps up his thoughts in Romans chapter 12, Paul says these words in verse 21. He says, don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. Do not let an offense conquer you. but conquer an offended soul and spirit by doing good. We move ourselves from a place of continual offense by recognizing that we don't repay evil for evil. But in light of evil, we give the world something it's never seen. A vision of something far greater and more beautiful than they could ever imagine. Through our lives, through our words, through our actions, we give the world a glimpse of a God who surrendered and sacrificed everything for us. Literally sent his son Jesus to the cross for us. That the very act of Jesus' sacrifice, his death, burial, and resurrection has set us free from this life and given us access to the life that is to come. And so the truth is, you and I, even though we're going to be angry, even though at times we'll struggle with offense, we can let it go. Mike, I'm going to feel like I'm walked on. No, just let it go. Because in the very act of letting it go, we show someone else a vision of what their life could be. Again, a life that's only possible because of what Jesus has done on the cross. Every single week as a church, one of the things that we do is we take communion. And if you're new to church, if this is your first time, really what communion is communion is an opportunity for believers everywhere. This is done in churches around this country and throughout this world. It's a declaration for believers everywhere to be reminded and to reflect on the significance and the sacrifice of Jesus. And many of you, when you came in, you grabbed communion. If you didn't get communion on the way in, go ahead and raise your hand, and one of our volunteers will bring it to you right now. But when we take communion, there's two pieces to it. There's this cracker, which reminds us of the body of Jesus. And then there's this juice, and the juice represents and reminds us of the blood of Jesus. And every time we gather together, we do this because we remember that all of life for a follower of Jesus is centered on Jesus. And so this moment isn't just to be like a rote act that we do week in and week out. No, use this moment to bring it all back to the center. To give gratitude and thankfulness for the ways that Jesus has set you free. And to ask for his strength to be his living example in our lives, in our world, day in and day out. And if you're not yet a follower of Jesus, no need to take communion. Maybe what I would ask of you is, over the next few moments, think about what we talked about today. Maybe identify some of the places in your life where you are quick to be offended. Maybe think about some of the inputs that lead to why you're offended in those areas. And ask God to give you a spirit and a soul and strength that comes from him, and not a spirit of defiance to make your point be known. Over the next few moments, I just invite you to use this space, and I'll come back up and close our time in prayer. Jesus, as we use this time to reflect and to remember the significance of your life, I'm reminded of how you walked out life. An innocent man, tried, found guilty of a crime you didn't commit. In the midst of that injustice, you didn't go to a fence. You went to the cross. You gave everything for us to set us free, to create a way back for broken people like us to God. Through your life, you painted a picture of what all of our lives should look like. And as hard as that is, as challenging as that is, we know it's what you ask of us. And we say thank you for that. And we commit not just this day, but each day to honor and to serve you, and with all that we have and all that we do. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. As we wrap up this morning, just two quick things. One, Jennifer kind of mentioned at the top, we love and value anytime we get an opportunity to connect and get to know some of our guests who are here for the first time. And we'd love for you to fill out a Connect card, but also we have something for you, because I know that when you show up at church, you can have a lot of questions, and where do I go to ask my questions and get some of those answered? And so we do something every week after service called 5 and 5, off to my left, your right. Really, it's a place for you to ask some of your questions. I've got like 5 common questions that I share answers to, but we handle all of it, I promise, in 5 minutes or less to honor your time. And so again, if you are newer here, haven't joined us at 5 and 5, love for you to be over there and to meet with you. Also, we can't talk about like living life and dealing with offenses without also acknowledging the real weight and burden and the struggle. And candidly, in some ways, we've been deeply offended. And so what we want to offer to you, even as we wrap up, if you're someone, you just need someone to pray with you, someone to stand with you, to hear your story, and to know that you're not alone, we would love to be able to do that with you. As we conclude service, some of our prayer team will be available up here up front, and please come up, find one of them, and they would love to be able to walk with you and to pray with you. Guys, thank you so much for being here this morning. We'll be back next week as we wrap up this series, Unoffendable. Don't miss it. Enjoy your Sunday, and I'll see you soon. God bless.